Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching 3 Allied fleets die before his eyes. The massive view screen showed brilliant flashes of light as another Zephyrian crystal ship exploded into fragments. Each flash meant thousands of lives lost in seconds. "Sir, we have lost contact with Battle Group 7, reported his communication officer. The young alien's crystalline face showed no emotion, but Taemin could sense the fear beneath the surface. The void swarm moved, like living darkness across the star field. Their ships looked like giant insects made of twisted metal and shadow. They consumed everything in their path, turning matter into more of themselves. 3 star systems had already fallen to their hunger. "How many ships do we have left?" Taemin asked. 47 Zephyrian vessels, 31 luminal energy ships, and 22 architect hive ships, came the reply. "We started this battle with over 200 ships." Taemin closed his eyes for a moment. The Galactic Defense Coalition was dying. Each member species brought their best technology to fight the swarm, but nothing worked. The Zephyrians had perfect crystal computers that could calculate any problem. The luminals were pure energy beings with weapons that moved at light speed. The architects built ships that could repair themselves and think as one mind. But the swarm adapted to everything. Every tactic, every weapon, every strategy. They learned and grew stronger with each battle. A new signal appeared on the communication array. Taemin looked at his sensor officer with surprise. "Sir, we have incoming ships. They are not swarm vessels." "Who are they?" The officer checked his readings twice. "They claim to be from a species called humans, from a planet called Earth. 50 ships approaching our position." Taemin had heard rumors about humans. They were new to galactic space, barely able to travel between stars. Their technology was primitive compared to the great civilizations. Most species considered them unworthy of notice. "Let them through our defensive line," Taemin ordered. "We need every ship we can get." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace, in a formation that made no sense to Taemin. Their ships were scattered across a wide area with no clear pattern. Zephyrian formations were perfect geometric shapes. Luminal ships moved in energy flows that followed natural laws. Architect vessels flew in synchronized groups that shared one mind. But human ships looked random. Some flew close together, while others spread far apart. Their largest vessel broke from the group and approached Taemin's flagship. "This is Captain Jiwoo of the human vessel Soul's Pride requesting permission to come aboard," came a voice over the communication system. Taemin was curious about these newcomers. Permission granted. 20 minutes later, Captain Jiwoo stood in the Coalition Command Center. She was smaller than most species in the room, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her uniform was simple compared to the ornate dress of other species. "Captain Jiwoo, I am Admiral Taemin of the Coalition Defense Fleet. We appreciate your offer to help, but I must warn you, the Void Swarm has destroyed our most advanced ships. Your technology may not be sufficient for this battle." Jiwoo smiled in a way that surprised Taemin. There was no fear in her expression, only confidence. "Admiral, we humans have a saying. It is not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog that matters." A Zephyrian commander stepped forward, his crystal body glowing with analytical light. "Captain, your weapons appear to use kinetic energy and chemical explosives. Our quantum beam arrays have proven ineffective against the swarm. How do you expect primitive technology to succeed?" "Commander, sometimes the old ways work when the new ways fail," Jiwoo replied. "But we are not here to fight alone. We want to work together." An architect drone spoke with the voice of its collective mind. "Your ship formations show no logical pattern. How do you coordinate attacks without mathematical precision?" Jiwoo looked at the tactical display showing the current battle. The swarm ships moved in perfect response to coalition attacks, countering every move before it happened. "That is exactly the problem," she said. "You are too predictable. The swarm reads your patterns and knows what you will do next. They adapt because they can calculate your next move. A luminal energy being flickered with curiosity. What do you propose?" "We propose chaos," said a new voice. Commander Sojin entered the room carrying a datapad. "The swarm expects logical behavior. They study your tactics and create counters, but humans do not always follow logic. Sojin activated a holographic display. We have studied the battle recordings. Every time you attack, the swarm responds with perfect timing. They know where you will strike because your tactics follow mathematical rules. Taemin studied the display. It was true. Coalition forces always attacked from optimal angles with maximum firepower efficiency. The swarm had learned to predict these optimal choices. What do humans do differently, he asked. We make mistakes, Jiwoo said with another smile. We take risks that make no sense. We attack when we should retreat and retreat when we should attack. Sometimes we do things just because they feel right. A Zephyrian analyst spoke up. That sounds like poor military strategy. Does it? Sojin pointed to another part of the display. Look at this swarm hive ship. It is positioned to defend against logical attack patterns. But what if we attacked through that asteroid field? Every alien in the room immediately saw the problem. That field is too dense, the Zephyrian said. Navigation computers cannot calculate safe passage through that chaos. Exactly, Jiwoo said. Which is why the swarm does not defend that approach. They know no logical species would attempt it. But humans would? Taemin asked. Humans pilot? With intuition as much as instruments, Sojin explained. We feel our way through problems that computers cannot solve. One of our best pilots, Dong-hyun, has flown through worse fields than that one. The room fell silent as alien minds processed this information. They had spent so long perfecting their logical approach to warfare that they had forgotten the value of unpredictability. You propose we combine our technology with your tactical unpredictability, Taemin said slowly. Yes, Jiwoo nodded. Your ships have better weapons and shields than ours. Our ships have pilots who can think in ways the swarm cannot predict. Together we might surprise them. Another explosion on the view screen reminded everyone that time was running short. The swarm continued to advance while they talked. We will. Try your approach, Taemin decided. What do you need from us? Give us your sensor data and weapons coordination systems, Sojin said. We will provide the chaos. As the meeting broke up, alien commanders returned to their ships with new hope. For the first time since the war began, they had a strategy the swarm had never encountered. Captain Jiwoo remained behind with Admiral Taemin. Admiral, I hope you understand. Humans make mistakes. Some of our pilots may not survive this battle. All species lose soldiers in war, Captain. Yes, but humans choose to lose them in ways that others might call foolish. We take risks that logical minds would never accept. Taemin looked at her with new respect. And that foolishness might save us all. Let us find out, Jiwoo said, and headed back to her ship. The first test of human chaos tactics was about to begin. 3 days after the first joint operation, engineer Hee-jin made a discovery that changed everything. She sat in her small laboratory aboard Seoul's Pride, staring at data that made no sense according to normal military theory. Captain Jiwoo, you need to see this, she called over the communication system. Jiwoo arrived within minutes, still wearing her flight suit from the morning patrol. What did you find? Hee-jin pointed to her screen, which showed wave patterns from the recent battle. I have been studying the swarm's communication signals during our attacks. Look at this pattern when the Zephyrians attacked their formation, the UR. Screen showed smooth, regular waves. The swarm responded perfectly. They predicted every move and countered with exact timing. Now look at this. Hee-jin switched to different data. This is from when Lieutenant Jae-sung broke formation and attacked that supply ship. The wave pattern looked completely different. Instead of smooth responses, the signals showed jagged spikes and sudden stops. The swarm could not predict what he would do, Hee-jin explained. Their communication network became confused. For 17 seconds, they sent conflicting orders to their ships. Jiwoo studied the data carefully. 17 seconds does not sound like much. In space combat, 17 seconds is forever. During that time, 3 swarm fighters crashed into each other because they received different flight commands. The implications hit Jiwoo immediately. You are saying that human unpredictability actually damages their coordination. More than that, Hyejin said, her voice growing excited. I think it causes them physical pain. The swarm shares one collective mind. When they cannot predict something, it creates errors in their thinking process, like a computer trying to divide by zero. This discovery spread quickly through the coalition fleet. Within hours, Admiral Taemin called an emergency meeting of all species commanders. If Engineer Hyejin is correct, the Admiral began, then human unpredictability is not just a tactical advantage, it is a weapon. Commander So-jin stood up to address the group. We propose to test this theory in the next engagement. We will coordinate a special operation. The test came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a swarm patrol moving toward the outer colonies. It was a perfect opportunity to try the new strategy. Lieutenant Jae-sung volunteered to lead the experiment. His fighter was equipped with coalition sensors and weapons, but he would fly it using pure human instinct. Remember, Captain Jiwoo told him before launch, do not think like a military pilot. Think like a human who happens to be flying a spaceship. The engagement began normally. Coalition forces attacked the swarm patrol using standard tactics. The aliens fought with their usual precision and efficiency. The swarm responded as expected, countering every move with perfect timing. Then Jae-sung entered the battle. Instead of following the tactical plan, he dove straight through the middle of both formations. Swarm ships scattered to avoid him, breaking their perfect attack pattern. But Jae-sung did something no logical pilot would attempt. His fighter was damaged and losing power. Any reasonable pilot would retreat to safety. Instead, Jae-sung accelerated directly toward the largest swarm ship. What is he doing? Demanded a Zephyrian commander. His ship will be destroyed. Has he lost his mind? Asked an architect drone. Captain Yuna watched calmly from her command chair. Wait and see. The swarm ship tried to calculate Jae-sung's attack angle, but his approach made no mathematical sense. He flew in a spiral pattern that changed randomly every few seconds. The swarm's defensive systems could not target him because they could not predict where he would be next. At the last second, just as collision seemed certain, Jae-sung ejected from his fighter. The empty ship slammed into the swarm vessel's main engine section. The explosion was massive, but more importantly, the swarm's entire formation fell into chaos. Without their command ship's guidance, the remaining vessels began flying in circles, bumping into each other like confused insects. Impossible, whispered a luminal energy being. One damaged fighter destroyed their entire command structure. Not the fighter, Yuna explained. The unpredictability. They could not process what Jae-sung was doing, so their collective mind became confused. The battle ended in complete coalition victory. For the first time since the war began, they destroyed an entire swarm formation without losing a single ship. But the real breakthrough came from Dr. Min-ji, the fleet's psychological specialist. She had been studying human behavior patterns and realized they could be weaponized in unexpected ways. If unpredictable actions confuse the swarm, she reasoned, then unpredictable information might do the same thing. Min-ji created what she called a chaos broadcast. It contained human music, poetry, mathematical equations that led nowhere, and random data patterns. The content made no logical sense, but it represented how human minds actually worked. We will transmit this during the next battle, she explained to the command staff. If the swarm tries to analyze it, their collective intelligence should become overloaded. Specialist Xiong-ho helped improve the concept. As the fleet's computer expert, he understood both human and alien thinking patterns. The problem with our alien allies, he told Min-ji, is that they are too organized. Their battle plans are mathematically perfect. The swarm has learned to read these patterns. Xiong-ho created something he called controlled randomness algorithms. These programs took the aliens' perfect battle plans and introduced small random changes. Instead of attacking at the optimal angle, he explained, we attack at the optimal angle plus or minus a random number. The attack is still effective, but the swarm cannot predict exactly when or where it will come. The new tactics were tested in a major engagement near the Proxima system. A large swarm fleet was moving toward a populated world with 2 billion civilians. Coalition forces met them in the asteroid belt surrounding the system. This time, human chaos tactics were integrated into every aspect of the battle plan. The engagement began with Minji's chaos broadcast. Almost immediately, swarm formations began showing signs of confusion. Their ships started making small errors in navigation and timing. Then the controlled randomness algorithms took effect. Coalition attacks came from directions that were almost predictable but not quite. The swarm's defensive systems kept making tiny miscalculations. The battle reached its climax when Commander Inho made a decision that horrified the alien commanders. Half the coalition fleet was trapped between two swarm formations. The logical choice was to retreat and regroup. Instead, Inho ordered his ships to split up and attack in 12 different directions at once. "That is suicide," protested a Zephyrian. "Captain, you are dividing your forces against superior numbers. Sometimes the worst tactic is the best tactic," Inho replied calmly. The swarm tried to respond to 12 separate attacks happening simultaneously. Their collective mind could not process so many chaotic actions at once. For the first time, in the war, swarm ships began making serious mistakes. 3 swarm vessels collided with asteroids because they miscalculated their position. 5 more suffered critical system failures when their computers became overloaded trying to analyze human tactics. The battle ended with another coalition victory, but more importantly, it proved that human chaos could be systematically used as a weapon. As the fleets regrouped, alien commanders began to see humans differently. They were not primitive newcomers who got lucky. They were a species whose very way of thinking could confuse and defeat an enemy that had adapted to all forms of logical warfare. "We are learning something important," Admiral Tayman told his staff. "The universe is not as orderly as we believed. Sometimes chaos is exactly what order needs to survive." The war was far from over, but for the first time the coalition had hope. They had found a weapon the swarm could not adapt to because it was not really a weapon at all. It was simply humanity being human. The victories were sweet, but they came with a bitter taste. Admiral Tayman watched the casualty report scroll across his screen and felt the weight of command pressing down on him like a physical force. 12 coalition ships lost in the last engagement. Most were human vessels that had taken the greatest risks during the chaotic attacks. The alien species were beginning to question whether human tactics were worth the cost. "Admiral," his aide announced, "the Council of Species has requested an emergency meeting." Tayman sighed. He had been expecting this conversation for days. The meeting room was crowded with representatives from all coalition species, but the atmosphere was tense. Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian fleet spoke first. His crystal form glowed with analytical light as he presented his data. "Human tactics have resulted in 17% higher casualty rates compared to standard coalition strategies," he stated. "While their unpredictability has advantages, the cost in lives is becoming unacceptable." A luminal representative flickered with agreement. "Our energy matrices show that emotional decision-making leads to suboptimal outcomes in 63% of cases. Logic remains the superior approach." The Architect Collective added their voice through a drone speaker. "Human methods introduce variables that cannot be calculated or controlled. This creates risk for all coalition forces." Admiral Tayman listened to the complaints, but noticed that Captain Jiwoo remained silent in her chair. Her expression was calm, but he could sense frustration beneath the surface. "What is your response to these concerns, Captain?" he asked. Jiwoo stood slowly and activated the central display. "You are measuring the wrong thing," she said simply. "You count our losses but ignore what we have gained." The display showed battle statistics from before human involvement. 3 months ago, the coalition was losing every major engagement. Entire fleets were being destroyed with no swarm losses. We were facing extinction. She switched to recent data. "In the last month, we have won every battle. Yes, we have lost ships, but we have also saved billions of lives by stopping swarm advances," a Zephyrian analyst interrupted. "The data shows that human ships take unnecessary risks. Your pilot Jae-sung could have retreated safely instead of sacrificing his fighter." "Could he?" Jiwoo asked. That swarm command ship was coordinating an attack on a colony transport. If he had followed logical tactics, 12,000 civilians would have died. The room fell silent. The alien species valued efficiency and logic, but they also understood the importance of protecting innocent lives. Commander So-jin joined the discussion. "You want us to be more like you," she said, "to calculate every risk and choose only actions with guaranteed positive outcomes. But that is exactly why the swarm was winning." "Explain," requested the Architect Collective. The swarm adapted to your logical thinking because logic follows patterns. Every species in this room makes decisions based on mathematical calculations. The swarm learned your mathematics. So Jin pointed to tactical displays showing swarm behavior patterns. They could predict your moves because your moves were optimal. There was only one best choice in each situation, so they knew what you would choose. "Are you suggesting that suboptimal choices are superior?" asked a luminal being. "I am suggesting that unpredictable choices are superior," Sojin replied. "Sometimes the second best tactic works better than the best tactic if your enemy does not expect it." The debate was interrupted by an emergency alert. Long-range sensors had detected a massive swarm fleet approaching the Centauri Gate, one of the most important strategic positions in Coalition space. "This is our chance to prove our point," Jiwoo said. "Give us command of this operation. If human tactics fail, we will accept whatever restrictions you want to place on us." Admiral Tai-min considered the proposal. The Centauri Gate controlled access to 3 major systems containing over 50 billion civilians. If they lost this battle, the war might be over. "Very well," he decided. "Commander In-ho will lead the operation using integrated human-alien tactics." The Coalition fleet moved to intercept the swarm at the Centauri Gate. It was the largest force either side had assembled, with over 300 Coalition ships facing nearly 500 swarm vessels. Commander In-ho studied the tactical situation and made a decision that shocked every alien in the fleet. "We are dividing our forces," he announced. "Half the fleet will engage the swarm directly. The other half will attempt passage through the unstable wormhole system." The protests were immediate and loud. "That wormhole system is unpredictable," warned a Zephyrian navigator. "Computer models show only a 20% chance of successful passage." "Exactly," In-ho replied. "The swarm's models show the same thing. They will not expect us to risk half our fleet on such poor odds." "But what if the models are correct?" asked an Architect commander. "We could lose half our ships before the battle even begins." "Then we fight with what we have left," In-ho said, simply. "But if the plan works, we will have the swarm trapped between 2 forces." The fleet split according to In-ho's plan. Admiral Tai-min remained with the direct engagement force while In-ho led the dangerous wormhole passage. As soon as the human-led force entered the unstable wormhole system, communication was lost. The aliens could only wait and hope while engaging. The main swarm fleet. Lieutenant Colonel Eunbi found herself in command of the remaining Coalition forces facing impossible odds. The swarm had positioned themselves perfectly to defend the Centauri Gate, using mathematical precision to create overlapping fields of fire. "We cannot break through their formation," reported a Zephyrian tactical officer. "They have calculated optimal defensive positions." Eunbi studied the enemy formation and smiled. "Then we will not try to break through. We will make them come to us." She ordered the Coalition fleet to retreat toward an asteroid cluster. The swarm followed, maintaining their perfect formation, but as they entered the asteroid field, Eunbi implemented the controlled chaos protocols developed by specialist Sung Ho. Instead of fighting like a military unit, the Coalition ships began fighting like individual hunters. Each captain was given freedom to choose their own targets and attack methods, with only basic coordination requirements. The swarm found themselves facing an enemy that acted like a school of fish, rather than a military formation. Every time, they predicted where the Coalition would attack. The actual attack came from somewhere else. Zephyrian precision weapons were guided by human intuition to hit targets that computers said were impossible to reach. Luminal energy beams followed flight paths that made no mathematical sense but somehow found their way to critical swarm systems. The battle became a dance between order and chaos, with chaos slowly gaining the advantage. Then, just as the swarm began to adapt to the new tactics, Inho's force emerged from the wormhole system directly behind the enemy formation. The human commander had successfully navigated his ships through space that alien computers considered impossible to traverse. The swarm, focused on the chaotic battle in front of them, had no defenses prepared for an attack from behind. Caught between two forces using unpredictable tactics, the swarm formation collapsed. Their collective intelligence became overloaded, trying to process attacks from multiple directions using methods that defied logical analysis. The battle ended in complete coalition victory. For the first time in the war, they had not just won an engagement but completely destroyed an enemy force. As the fleets regrouped, alien commanders looked at their human partners with new respect. The Council of Species met again, but this time, the discussion was very different. "We owe you an apology," Commander Veltar told Captain Jiwoo. "We measured your tactics by our standards instead of judging them by their results." "No apology needed," Jiwoo replied. "You were right to question us. Good allies should challenge each other to be better." Admiral Taemin addressed the full assembly. "This battle has taught us something important. Our greatest strength is not our individual capabilities, but our ability to combine different ways of thinking. The swarm adapted to logical thinking because they are logical beings," added Commander Sojin. "But they cannot adapt to the combination of logic and intuition, order and chaos, calculation and instinct." The Architect Collective made a rare individual statement through their drone. "We request permission to study human decision-making processes. Perhaps there is value in controlled unpredictability." As the meeting ended, alien and human officers began working together in new ways. The rigid separation between species was breaking down, replaced by integrated teams that combined the best qualities of each civilization. The war was far from over, but the coalition had discovered something more powerful than any weapon. They had learned to think as one mind with many different perspectives. The swarm had adapted to fighting logical enemies. Now they would face an enemy that was both logical and chaotic, predictable and surprising, united and diverse. It was a combination that had never existed before in galactic history, and it was about to change the course of the war. 2 weeks after the victory at Centauri Gate, something remarkable was happening throughout the coalition fleet. In research labs, training centers, and command bridges, humans and aliens were working together in ways that neither side had thought possible. Tactical Officer Kyung-soo sat in a Zephyrian analysis chamber, surrounded by floating crystal displays that hurt his human eyes to look at directly. But the pain was worth it. He was learning to see mathematics the way crystalline minds did, while teaching them to see patterns the way humans did. "Show me the probability cascade for Sector 7 again," he asked his Zephyrian partner, Analyst Kill 10. The crystal being projected complex mathematical structures into the air around them. To Kill 10, these equations represented the most likely outcomes of various battle scenarios. But Kyung-soo saw something different. There, he pointed to a seemingly random section of the calculation. "That fluctuation pattern. Your computer treats it as statistical noise, but it looks like human behavior to me." Kill 10 examined the data more carefully. "You are suggesting that apparent randomness might contain predictable elements?" "Not predictable exactly," Kyung-soo explained, "but there are patterns in human unpredictability. We might seem chaotic to you, but we have reasons for what we do. They are just not mathematical reasons." This collaboration was producing something entirely new. Chaos mathematics. It was a way of using human unpredictability as a calculated variable in battle plans. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, they learned to weaponize it. Across the fleet, similar partnerships were forming. Pilot Subin had volunteered for the most dangerous experiment yet, direct interface with a luminal energy being. "Are you certain about this?" asked Captain Jiwoo as Subin prepared for the procedure. "No human has ever attempted mental contact with an energy-based life form." Subin nodded confidently. "The luminals move faster than any physical ship, but they think too much before acting. If we can combine their speed with human instinct, we will create something the swarm has never seen. The interface procedure took place in a specially designed chamber aboard the luminal vessel Bright Current. Subin lay on a medical bed while energy patterns flowed around her body. Dr. Minji monitored her vital signs while luminal technicians prepared the connection. "Initiating contact," announced the lead luminal, a being called Swift Thought. Subin felt her mind expand as alien consciousness touched her thoughts. It was like trying to drink from a waterfall of pure information. The luminal's thoughts moved at incredible speed, processing thousands of calculations every second. But something unexpected happened. Instead of being overwhelmed, Subin began to influence the energy being's thought patterns. Her human intuition acted like a filter, helping Swift Thought focus on the most important information while ignoring unnecessary details. "This is incredible." Swift Thought communicated directly into Subin's mind. "Your thought patterns are showing me solutions I never calculated." The experiment was so successful that within days, hybrid fighter squadrons were formed. Human pilots interfaced with luminal energy beings to create ships that moved like living thought but struck with human cunning. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Hyunwoo was working with the architects on an even more ambitious project. The architects built ships that could think and repair themselves, but they were limited by logical thinking patterns. "What if we taught your ships to think like humans?" Hyunwoo suggested during a design meeting. The architect collective considered this through their drone representatives. "Our construction algorithms require mathematical precision. Human thinking patterns contain too many variables." "But those variables are what make us adaptable," Hyunwoo explained. "Your ships are perfect when they are built, but they cannot change when conditions change. Human-designed ships are messy, but they can be modified for any situation. Solution was to create adaptive construction protocols. Architect ships would still be built with mathematical precision, but they would also contain human-designed systems that could evolve during combat. The first test of this technology came when a coalition patrol encountered a new type of swarm weapon. The enemy had developed energy drains that could shut down any ship's power systems within minutes. "All Zephyrian and luminal vessels are losing power," reported the patrol leader. "We are dead in space." But the hybrid architect human ships immediately began adapting. Their human-designed systems started modifying themselves, finding new ways to generate and distribute power that the swarm weapons could not drain. Within an hour, the ships had literally rebuilt themselves into forms that were immune to the new swarm weapon. They rescued the disabled vessels and brought news of this breakthrough back to the main fleet. "This is revolutionary," Admiral Tae-min told his assembled commanders. "We now have ships that can evolve during battle." The most impressive advancement came from an unexpected source. Sergeant Major Bora had been tasked with training mixed crews to work together effectively. She discovered that the key was not making aliens think like humans, but teaching both species to think together. "Stop trying to be logical," she told a mixed crew during training. "Stop trying to be chaotic. Instead, be both at the same time." Her training methods seemed strange to outside observers. Crews would practice switching between logical and intuitive thinking during simulated battles. Zephyrian officers learned to trust human gut feelings. Human pilots learned to appreciate alien precision. The results were remarkable. Mixed crews performed better than either pure human or pure alien crews. They combined the best qualities of both approaches while eliminating the weaknesses of each. Dr. Chan-mi took this concept even further by developing neural interfaces that allowed real-time tactical fusion between human intuition and alien logic systems. Commanders could access both analytical data and intuitive insights simultaneously. "It is like having two different minds working on the same problem," she explained to Admiral Tae-min. "The logical mind calculates the best solution while the intuitive mind finds creative alternatives." These advances were tested in a major engagement against a swarm fleet that had been terrorizing the outer colonies. The enemy had grown more sophisticated, developing new tactics to counter coalition strategies. Major Sang-woo led the assault using the new integrated technologies. His ship was equipped with adaptive architect systems, hybrid luminal human fighters, and neural interfaces that connected human intuition with alien analysis systems. The battle began normally, with both sides using familiar tactics. But as the engagement progressed, something unprecedented happened. The coalition fleet began changing its behavior in real time, adapting to swarm countermeasures faster than the enemy could respond. Ships rebuilt themselves to counter new weapons. Fighters moved with impossible speed and accuracy. Battle plans evolved moment by moment as human intuition and alien logic worked together to find solutions neither could achieve alone. The swarm tried to adapt, but they were facing an enemy that adapted faster. Every time they developed a counter to coalition tactics, new tactics appeared that made their countermeasures useless. For the first time since the war began, the swarm showed signs of true confusion. Their collective intelligence could not process an enemy that was simultaneously logical and chaotic, predictable and surprising. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the swarm fleet, but more importantly, it proved that the synthesis of human and alien capabilities created something greater than the sum of its parts. Colonel Yan Ho participated in the final phase of the battle, leading a joint task force to capture a swarm queen ship intact. This required the ultimate combination of alien stealth technology and human psychological manipulation. The queen ship is the key to understanding their collective mind, he explained to his mixed crew. But we cannot take it by force. We must make them give it to us. The plan was audacious. Instead of attacking the queen ship, they would make the swarm believe they were retreating in panic. The queen ship would pursue them into a trap, thinking it was chasing defeated enemies. The deception required perfect coordination between species. Zephyrian computers calculated exactly how damaged the coalition ships needed to appear. Luminal energy beings created fake distress signals. Human actors played the part of panicked crews. The swarm took the bait. The queen ship broke formation to pursue what appeared to be easy targets. Too late, it discovered that the retreat was fake and the damaged ships were surrounded by cloaked coalition forces. The capture was successful, providing the coalition with invaluable intelligence about swarm organization and weaknesses. But the real victory was the flawless cooperation between species that had once seemed too different to work together. As the fleets regrouped after this latest victory, Admiral Taemin reflected on how much had changed since the humans first arrived. "We thought we were teaching them our technologies," he told Captain Jiwoo. "Instead, they taught us how to think differently." "We learned from each other," Jiwoo replied. "That is what real partners do." The war was entering its final phase, and the coalition was no longer just an alliance of convenience. They had become something new, a true fusion of different ways of thinking that was stronger than any individual species could be alone. The swarm had adapted to fighting logical. The captured queen ship sat in the coalition's most secure facility, surrounded by layers of defenses and scientific equipment. For 3 weeks, teams of researchers from every species had been studying its secrets. What they discovered would change everything. Dr. Chanmi stood before the Coalition War Council, her face grave with the weight of terrible knowledge. "We have found their weakness," she announced, "but using it will require the greatest coordinated effort in galactic history." Admiral Taemin leaned forward in his chair. "Explain." "The swarm is not truly a collective intelligence," Chanmi began. "They are trillions of individual minds connected through quantum entanglement to a series of central nodes. These nodes process all information and send commands back to the individual units." She activated a holographic display showing the structure of swarm communication networks. "Think of it like a vast computer network. The individual swarm units are like terminals, while the central nodes are the main processors." "How many central nodes are there?" asked Captain Jiwoo. 17, Chanmi replied, "scattered across the galaxy in hidden locations. They must maintain perfect synchronization to control trillions of swarm units simultaneously." The implications were staggering. Commander Sojin spoke what everyone was thinking. "If we could disrupt their synchronization, the entire swarm network would suffer cascade failure," Chanmi confirmed. "Every swarm unit would lose coordination. Simultaneously, they would become helpless." General Hoon-ki studied the display carefully. "What kind of disruption would be required?" "That is the challenge," Chanmi admitted. The nodes are designed to resist logical attacks. They can predict and counter any systematic assault, but they were not designed to handle true chaos. She switched the display to show battle analysis data. Remember how human unpredictability confused individual swarm ships? The same principle applies to their central nodes, but on a much larger scale. You want us to attack all 17 nodes simultaneously using chaotic tactics, Admiral Taemin said slowly. The coordination alone would be impossible. Not impossible, interrupted Specialist Sung-ho. Difficult, but not impossible. We would need to create controlled chaos on a galactic scale. Sung-ho presented his analysis to the council. Each attack must be unpredictable, but they must all happen at exactly the same time. If even one attack is delayed, the surviving nodes will adapt and strengthen their defenses. How do we coordinate 17 simultaneous attacks across the galaxy without the swarm detecting our preparations? Asked a Zephyrian commander. The answer came from an unexpected source. Sergeant Major Bora had been training mixed crews for months, and she understood better than anyone how different species could work together. We do not coordinate through communication, she said. We coordinate through understanding. Each attack team must know their part so well that they can execute it without needing orders. Her plan was audacious. Instead of traditional military coordination, they would use what she called organic synchronization. Each species would contribute their unique strengths to create a symphony of chaos that would overwhelm the swarm nodes. Humans will provide the unpredictability, Bora explained. Zephyrians will ensure precise timing. Luminals will handle rapid response adaptations. Architects will coordinate the technical aspects. Dr. Chan Mi added the final piece of the puzzle, neural interfaces that would allow real-time tactical fusion between all species. Not just human-alien cooperation, but true mental unity during the operation. The interfaces will let us think as one mind with multiple perspectives, she explained. Each attack team will be connected to all the others through quantum entanglement communication. When one team makes a decision, all teams will feel it and adapt accordingly. The preparation took 2 months. 17 task forces were assembled, each containing ships from every coalition species. Every team received intensive training in organic synchronization and neural interface protocols. Major Sang-woo commanded Task Force 7, assigned to attack the node hidden in the Vega system. His team included Zephyrian analysis ships, luminal energy fighters, architect construction vessels, and human chaos specialists. Remember, he told his mixed crew during the final briefing, we are not just attacking a target. We are creating a note in a galactic symphony. Our attack must harmonize with 16 other attacks happening simultaneously. The neural interfaces were installed during the final week of preparation. For the first time in galactic history, minds from different species would be directly connected during combat operations. Captain Yoon-ah underwent the procedure aboard her command ship. As the interface activated, she felt her consciousness expand to include alien thought patterns. She could sense Zephyrian logic, luminal energy flows, and architect collective processing. But most remarkably, she could feel the other 16 task force commanders across the galaxy. Their minds were connected through quantum entanglement, creating a unified intelligence that spanned thousands of light years. This is incredible, reported Commander In-ho from Task Force 3. I can sense what all of you are thinking and feeling. The synchronization is perfect, added Lieutenant Colonel Yoon-bi from Task Force 12. We truly are thinking as one mind. The final assault began exactly at the planned moment. Across the galaxy, 17 task forces moved simultaneously toward their targets. The swarm detected the attacks immediately, but they could not understand what they were seeing. Each attack was completely different from the others, yet somehow coordinated. Task Force 7 approached through an unstable nebula that should have made navigation impossible. Task Force 3 attacked during a solar storm that disrupted all communications. Task Force 12 used gravitational slingshots around black holes to achieve impossible velocities. The swarm central nodes tried to calculate responses to these chaotic attacks, but each node was processing different types of chaos simultaneously. Their collective intelligence became overloaded trying to understand 17 different forms of organized randomness. Major Sang-woo felt the moment when the swarm's coordination began to break down. Through the neural interface, he could sense the enemy's confusion spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. "All units, initiate final phase," he commanded, knowing that his words would be felt by every other task force commander simultaneously. The attacks reached their climax in perfect synchronization. 17 different forms of chaos struck 17 different targets at exactly the same instant. The swarm nodes tried to process this information, but their quantum processors could not handle the contradictory data. One by one, the central nodes suffered cascade failure. Their attempts to understand human unpredictability created logical paradoxes that crashed their entire systems. Across the galaxy, trillions of swarm units suddenly lost contact with their controlling intelligence. Ships that had moved in perfect formation began flying in circles. Weapons that had fired with mathematical precision stopped working entirely. But something unexpected happened as the nodes failed. The quantum entanglement network that connected them began to destabilize, creating dimensional rifts in space-time itself. "We have a problem," reported Dr. Chanmi from the main coalition fleet. "The network collapse is creating spatial distortions. If they continue to expand, they could tear apart half the galaxy." Through the neural interface, all 17 task force commanders felt the same terrible realization. They had won the war, but their victory might destroy the very galaxy they were trying to save. Captain Daeun, commanding Task Force 1 near the Galactic core, was the first to understand what needed to be done. The dimensional rifts are spreading. Along the old quantum entanglement pathways, she reported through the neural interface. "We need to contain them before they reach critical mass." General Hoon-ki, monitoring the situation from the command center, felt a chill of fear through the shared consciousness. How do we contain dimensional rifts on a galactic scale? The answer came from the collective intelligence they had created: human intuition, Zephyrian analysis, luminal energy manipulation, and architect construction knowledge combined to produce a solution that no single species could have conceived. "We use the same technique that won the war," Captain Jiwoo realized. Controlled chaos to create order from disorder. The 17 task forces immediately began the most dangerous operation in galactic history. Instead of retreating from the expanding rifts, they moved closer, using their ships to create quantum anchor points that would stabilize the dimensional tiers. Architect vessels extended construction beams into the rifts themselves, building frameworks of pure mathematics to hold spacetime together. Luminal energy beings poured their essence into the dimensional tiers, using their natural connection to spacetime to reinforce weakened areas. Zephyrian computers calculated precise intervention points, while human pilots flew impossible courses. Through the dimensional chaos, guided by instinct rather than instruments, Commander Wu Jin led his ships directly into the largest rift near the galactic core. "This is insane," reported his Zephyrian science officer. "The dimensional stress will tear our ships apart." "Maybe," Wu Jin replied calmly. "But if we do not try, the stress will tear the galaxy apart." The operation required absolute trust between species. Human pilots had to fly their AUR. 6 months after the final battle, Captain Daeun stood in what had once been the command center of a Swarm Queen ship. But the twisted metal and organic components had been transformed into something beautiful. Zephyrian crystals grew alongside, human-designed support beams. Luminal energy patterns flowed through architect construction networks. The ship was no longer a weapon of destruction. It had become a symbol of transformation. "The dimensional repairs are ahead of schedule," reported Engineer Hai Jin, consulting a display that showed galactic recovery statistics. "The combined construction teams are working faster than any single species could manage alone." Daeun nodded, but her attention was focused on a more delicate problem. Through the neural interface that all commanders now shared, she could sense something troubling in the quantum background noise of local space. "Lieutenant Ji-hoon," she called to her science officer, "are you detecting the same anomalies I am sensing?" Ji-hoon checked his instruments, but the readings made no sense according to normal physics. "Captain, the quantum field fluctuations suggest that the dimensional rifts are not completely sealed. There appears to be residual energy from the swarm network. The implications were disturbing. If pieces of the swarm collective intelligence had survived in the dimensional tiers, they could potentially rebuild their network over time. Contact Admiral Taman, Dawn ordered. We may have a new problem. The emergency council meeting included representatives from all coalition species, now permanently linked through quantum communication networks. The neural interfaces had evolved beyond their original military purpose, becoming the foundation for true galactic unity. The residual swarm energy is not dangerous in its current state, explained Dr. Chanmi. But if left alone, it could eventually reconstruct portions of their collective intelligence. Commander So-Jin studied the sensor data carefully. We cannot simply destroy this energy. It is integrated with the fabric of space-time itself. Any attempt to eliminate it could reopen the dimensional rifts. Then, what do you propose? Asked Admiral Taman. The solution came from an unexpected source. Through the neural interface, they felt a new presence touching their shared consciousness. It was alien, but not hostile. Curious rather than threatening. What is that? Whispered. A Zephyrian analyst. Lieutenant Ji-hoon was monitoring quantum communication channels when he made the incredible discovery. It is the swarm consciousness, he reported. But it has been changed by exposure to our combined thought patterns. The presence in their shared mental space grew stronger, and suddenly they could understand what it was trying to communicate. The swarm collective intelligence had not been destroyed. It had been transformed by contact with human chaos, Zephyrian logic, luminal energy patterns, and architect construction protocols. It is no longer the same entity that tried to consume the galaxy, realized Dr. Chanmi. Our neural interfaces during the final battle created a feedback loop. The swarm consciousness absorbed our cooperative thought patterns. Captain Hyo-jin, the coalition specialist in interspecies communication, established the first direct contact with the transformed consciousness. What do you want? She asked, through the neural interface. The answer came not in words but in shared concepts and emotions. The entity that had once been the swarm now understood concepts it had never experienced before. Cooperation instead of consumption. Creation instead of destruction. Diversity instead of uniformity. It wants to help, Hyo-jin reported with wonder. The collective consciousness realizes that its original purpose was wrong. It wants to create instead of destroy. This revelation created intense debate among coalition leaders. Could they trust an entity that had tried to exterminate all other life in the galaxy, even if it claimed to be reformed? General Hoon-ki voiced the concerns many felt. How do we know this is not an elaborate deception? The swarm was known for its ability to adapt and deceive. But Commander Hae-won, who had extensive experience with the neural interfaces, sensed something different. Deception requires the ability to hide thoughts. Through the quantum interface we can sense its true intentions. The transformation is genuine. The debate continued for hours. But ultimately the decision came down to a fundamental choice about the future of galactic civilization. Captain Ji-woo spoke for many when she said, "We fought this war not to destroy our enemies, but to protect our way LF. Our way of life includes the possibility of redemption and second chances." The decision was made to attempt integration of the transformed swarm consciousness into the coalition partnership. It would be the greatest test of their cooperative principles. Lieutenant Commander Hae-won coordinated the integration process. The former swarm consciousness was gradually introduced to coalition thought patterns through carefully controlled neural interface sessions. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. The entity possessed vast knowledge about space-time manipulation, quantum engineering, and biological systems. But instead of using this knowledge for consumption and destruction, it began contributing to reconstruction efforts. Swarm biotechnology was redesigned to heal rather than consume. Their space-folding techniques were adapted to improve interstellar travel. Their collective processing power was applied to solving complex galactic problems like resource distribution and environmental restoration. The transformation was not without challenges. Some of the former swarm units retained aggressive instincts that required careful management. Integration teams led by specialists like Sergeant Major Bora worked tirelessly to retrain individual units for peaceful purposes. Think of it as rehabilitation on a galactic scale, Bora explained to concerned coalition citizens. Every being deserves a chance to choose a better path. The most remarkable development came when the transformed consciousness began creating new life forms. Using its advanced biotechnology combined with coalition diversity principles, it produced organisms that enhanced rather than consumed their environments. These new creations helped accelerate the healing of worlds damaged during the war. Planets that had been stripped of life began to flourish again, with the help of engineered organisms that could restore ecosystems in decades rather than millennia. Captain Da Yun witnessed one of these restoration projects on a world that had been completely consumed by the original swarm. Where once there had been only barren rock, now there were vast gardens filled with hybrid plants that combined characteristics from dozens of different species. "It is beautiful," she said to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. "But more than that, it represents something we never thought possible." "What is that, Captain?" asked her Zephyrian science officer. "True redemption," Da-Yun replied. "The proof that any consciousness, no matter how destructive its past, can choose to become something better." The integration process culminated in a ceremony that took place simultaneously across thousands of worlds. The Galactic Defense Coalition officially became the Galactic Partnership Alliance, with the transformed swarm consciousness as a full member. Admiral Taemin delivered the keynote address, which was broadcast through quantum communications to every inhabited system in the galaxy. "Today marks not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new era," he began. "We have learned that our greatest strength lies not in our weapons or our technology, but in our ability to see beyond our differences and work together toward common goals." He gestured toward a display showing the transformed swarm entities working alongside coalition species to rebuild damaged worlds. "We have also learned that redemption is possible for any consciousness willing to embrace cooperation over conflict, creation over consumption, and love over fear." The ceremony concluded with the establishment of integration protocols that would govern how different species and consciousness types would work together in the new alliance. Captain Hyojin was appointed as the first director of interspecies relations, responsible for facilitating communication between all members of the expanded partnership. Her first task was establishing educational programs that would help citizens throughout the galaxy understand and appreciate their new diversity. The old galaxy was divided into separate species that occasionally cooperated, she explained in her inaugural address. "The new galaxy will be united by shared consciousness that celebrates our differences as sources of strength." As the ceremonies ended and normal life resumed, the effects of the transformation became apparent in countless, small ways. Human creativity inspired alien innovation. Alien logic helped humans solve complex problems. The former swarm consciousness contributed vast computational power to projects that benefited everyone. Trade routes that had once been defended by warships were now maintained by cooperative construction teams. Planets that had been fortress worlds became centers of learning and cultural exchange. Children growing up in this new galaxy would never know the fear and isolation that had defined the old era. They would be raised understanding that diversity was not a source of conflict, but a foundation for strength. The neural interface technology, originally developed for military coordination, became the basis for galactic communication networks that allowed instantaneous sharing of ideas and discoveries across vast distances. Artists collaborated across species barriers to create works that no single consciousness could have.